conditions today are not better than last year. Actually, they are deteriorating, and we're seeing more violence, we're seeing more destruction, we're seeing more people dying, and it is true that the solution to the conflict seems to be even more far away than ever in the past more than 7 years of conflict. The paradox is that the more the solution seems to be far away and the more destruction we see on the ground, including the awful use of weapons of mass destruction we were never thinking of seeing again in our human civilizations, the more urgent a political solution becomes. The only way to avoid that the Syrian crisis further spirals into a wider regional or global confrontation is to put all the pressure on the parties, and namely on the Syrian regime, to come to Geneva with meaningful intentions for negotiations. We are clearly not, nobody is clearly in the mood for talks. We don't need a process for the sake of the process. We need the political negotiations to not only start in Geneva, but also be serious. The more I'm tired, the more I'm generous. Les partis syriens s'engagent à une discussion sérieuse entre eux, sous la direction des Nations Unies, qui sont les seuls à avoir la légitimité internationale à le faire, pour entrer dans une phase de transition politique.
I'd like to go back to your answer to the Iran question from.
Well, the pressure can be put on Assad mainly by the ones that are supporting Assad, which is definitely not us. So the discussions we're having, especially with the Russians and the Iranians, are based on the pressure we can put on them so that they can exercise influence on Damascus to enter serious negotiations.
The Syria conference next week. If you could confirm, because last year the absence of senior officials.
So there is an element of political will in the capitals that have an influence on Damascus, and there is an element of responsiveness of Damascus to these pressures that might be put in place. The money for the reconstruction from the European Union side, and I'm sure also for the international financial institutions, will come, and this is the good news, but will only come in the moment when the political transition, a political process will be firmly underway under UN auspices in Geneva. Somehow, the Brussels conference will also be a way for showing not only the Syrian regime, but also the ones that are supporting it, mainly Russia and Iran, of what they are deciding to give up to in terms of economic resources for the reconstruction of a country that we would be ready to do in case the political process doesn't properly start. Sorry, I need to make a specification on this point. Humanitarian aid doesn't fall under any political consideration. It is given purely on the basis of humanitarian needs. There is never a political consideration from the European Union side on how we give money to the people in need in humanitarian cases. But the reconstruction of a country after 7 years plus of war is a different thing. Last but not least at all, I would say actually even first, and all ministers stress this point as a key issue, increasing our support for Russian citizens, civil society, human rights defenders, people-to-people contact, especially a focus on the youth of Russia Federation. We have started a policy of selective engagement with the Russian Federation in areas where we see a European Union interest to do so, and Member States agree that this is still a very much valid principle. We need to continue to apply, mainly in the areas of foreign and security policy, I mentioned the JCPOA, so the nuclear deal with Iran. I could mention the Middle East peace process and the work we do in the Quartet. I could mention Afghanistan or the DPRK, or global issues like climate change, environment, migration, counter-terrorism, or cooperation in the Arctic. We have seen an evolving pattern of challenging Russian behaviour in many different fields. Central to these challenges is, of course, still the situation in Ukraine, with the illegal annexation of the Crimean Peninsula.